Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This is a 6-line poem called The Real Work by Wendell Berry. It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, we have come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. Well, if I were really smart, I would just end the Dharma talk there. What can be lived up to after that? Beautiful, brief poem, and I think it speaks very much to where many of us are today. And so I was in Europe, as you know, for 2 weeks. I went to my granddaughter's university graduation from the University College Utrecht, which is about 30 minutes north of Amsterdam. And it looks like a little Amsterdam. It's got canals and very youthful. Doesn't quite have the smoke that you get in the cafes in Amsterdam, but it's a very spirited place with young people. It's a college town, and looks just like a little Amsterdam. It's a great pleasure to be there. The central and oldest place in Utrecht is the cathedral, and it's called St. Martin's Cathedral, named after St. Martin of Tours, who was a very early saint in about the 3rd century or 4th century, who was known for giving his cloak to a beggar, actually cutting his cape in half and giving half to a beggar. And so he was known for that kind of gesture of the care of the homeless, for the forsaken. And of course, St. Martin was a Catholic saint, and the cathedral was built first as a Catholic cathedral, and then in the Reformation became a Protestant cathedral. But also, as Calvinism was the religion of the time, all of the statues were removed, and all from the outside of the cathedral as well as the inside. And the cathedral is enormous. It is, the spire is 365 feet, something like that. And the interior of the church is probably 200 feet. It's an extraordinarily huge place. And so you have this sense of awe, of course, as you go into such a place. And the organ, the pipes on the organ are just extraordinary. They are as high as the ceiling almost. So there is this feeling, at least for me, that we hardly live up to our ancestors, that we don't exactly measure up in some way. Certainly when we were building our own country, this country here, not to mention taking over lands that were not ours. When towns were developed, always the church spire was the tallest in the town. And it was meant to be that. It was meant to remind us always of the virtues that we would live, and that the sense of community and brotherhood and peace and all of these things would be a part of our daily life as we would always see the spire. It was certainly true of my own growing up in Brooklyn, where the church spires were the tallest in our neighborhood, and they rang every 15 minutes. The church bell rang every 15 minutes, all 24 hours a day. So you're always brought in and reminded of how to live and how to shape your life in a way to take care of your neighbors and to take care of yourself. So, there is this sense of age. The cathedral was started in about the year 800 and grew from there and was eventually built to the size it is now. I think maybe in about 1400-ish. And then in the 1500s, then it moved into a Protestant church in the Reformation. And there was so many wars going on. It was taken over by the Normans, and then it was demolished by storms, and the spire fell, and it went through incredible times. So when you go in, there's no sign of even a crucifix or a cross. The altar has a kind of a frieze, and there's some angels and something like that. But there's this body in marble that is lying across the front of this altar, and it's the man who was an admiral. And this is the main altar. So there's not very much that you can see in it that would speak particularly of Christianity. Simply because Calvinism didn't allow for any kind of spiritual idolatry by way of statues. And yet there's that sense of that sense of awe and that sense of history that has resided there for such a long time. The university is also built, actually, I don't know when it was actually built, but it was declared a university in about 1635, about the same year as Harvard University in our country. So education has always been, rooted in our growth. And so that's the sense, the background in which this graduation took place. And certainly the students were demonstrating outside, giving out pamphlets that looked like this. No students could graduate in Gaza this year. No universities have survived. Utrecht University, among many other Dutch universities, is complicit in the colonial occupation and war crimes committed by the Israeli state against Palestinians. We say, not in our name, not with our money, not with our resources. So these were the students then who were giving out these pamphlets. I spoke with one of them and received it and was grateful for that. All across Europe, there have been student demonstrations going on, just as there have been here. However, at the graduation ceremony, and numerous students, a lot of students were wearing Palestinian scarves. And the salutatorian and the valedictorian, both women, young women, gave their speeches, their talks, congratulating everybody and urging them to go forward in their lives. And then they spoke about Gaza and with this same kind of theme. And when the dean got up to speak, she completely received this and completely acknowledged the right of the students to express their views. And she certainly leaned toward their views also, I would say. And so there was no sense of disruption between the faculty and the students. The students were deeply accepted in their demonstration and in their voices on behalf of Gaza. And the audience received it quite as well. profound applause for the students who spoke on behalf of Gaza and certainly an end to the war. So this question of not knowing what to do. So here we have all these graduates. So many of them don't know what to do. And so they will spend a year not knowing what to do. Some will, of course, go forward and have decided. But there's this time of not knowing what to do. When I think about that, I think about Gandhi. And Gandhi spent quite a number of years not knowing what to do. All his country had been taken over by the British. They were not permitted to make cloth. They had to get all of their cloth made by people in England, and then it was shipped to them. And they were not permitted to make salt, and nobody can live without salt. So Gandhi spent many years trying to figure out what to do, how to wrest his country from the binds of colonialism. And then he realized, and of course we know Gandhi's Salt March. It's called his Salt March. He realized they could defy the requirements and go and make salt. It was such a declaration. And he began his march. It was about 50 miles or so to the coast. And more people joined him, and they got to the coast and they began to make salt. He's my favorite in history on this particular not know what to do. I think Abraham Lincoln also had many times when he did not know what to do. I mean, many people in our history who are caught by profound difficulties and not know what to do. What I like about this poem is that although it says we don't know what to do, we come to our real work and we come to our real journey. And the poem ends with that movement. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. So this bafflement, this problem of where do we go? What is next? That's the employment of our beginnings. And the impeded stream is the one that sings. We all know that. We all know if we are out hiking, we can hear the stream, and when we get to it, it's full of stones and splashings because of the stones and the impeded markings in the stream itself. Make the stream sing. And so those impediments that we come across, that we think are impossible for us, are the very things that allow us to begin to sing with life, to begin to sing with something that can loosen up in us, that can allow us to see how to go. And not knowing what to do is a holy place. Not knowing what to do means we are standing at the gate, and that we are waiting because the answer is to come. It's a holy place. That bafflement is a holy mind. But we have great patience then to be able to know which direction to take, whether to do anything or not, whether we act or we don't act. Extraordinary patience. And it also takes which I think is not so extraordinary because I think it's what we are, requires that we stand in the total light of the Dharma, that we claim that light, that we claim it because it is our universal truth. And more than anything, that's what we do have to do while we use a remarkable amount of patience. So the atmosphere in Europe was not peaceful. The Europeans are gravely concerned about Ukraine, gravely concerned about the juxtaposition of Ukraine, and that should Ukraine fall, they see war in Europe. So it was very real and very difficult to hear discussions about this. I mean, we know that in this country, but we don't live next door to Ukraine. We are quite a distance. But Ukraine is right next door to, it's part of Europe. So there's very, very, very real discussion about what comes next. And of course, our own country, of course, is dealing with such turmoil and just lying, just lies everywhere. And so frustrating to hear that. When we think not so many years ago, to lie would have been just a horrible crime, a horrible sin in our country. And now it is just plain fashionable. So if you are one who doesn't know what to do, I am another. I don't know what to do. But I do know what we have to do as practitioners. That we have to claim the illuminating light of the Dharma for ourselves, that is completely who we are, and to recognize that we are all illuminated in the light of Buddha nature. So that turmoil that we may feel is, of course, that very singing of the stream. And that if we are feeling that, we can know that something is stirring in us that is appropriate and timely. So I can only read this poem again, and then I want to ask you, who do you know through in history or in your life who has not known what to do? Who do you know? Who do you remember? Who can you think of? Because it is, I mean, certainly for Gandhi, it was a great, great lesson. Because as we know in our own country, we have been so abrupt in our responses to war. Instead of waiting and considering, we did it in Iraq. And it was a time of great humility and great patience. And we didn't do that. It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, we have come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. You can find that online if you want. It's by Wendell Berry, and the title is The Real Work. Who can you think of in history? Does anybody think of who might have not known? Yes, Bill.
Oscar Romero. Oscar Romero was he was a middling bishop in El Salvador, and he was chosen as the Archbishop of El Salvador because he was reputed to have no spine. And it was in the middle of a brutal repression. And his transformation over a couple of years, I think it was in the late 60s, might have been in the mid 70s, I can't quite recall. He was, there's an incredible movie, Raul Julia plays Romero. And there's a scene in which he wanders through a kind of a wasteland of, like a garbage dumper. I mean, he's just in this profound crisis, and he begins this campaign that leads to his death. And he gives a speech over the radio. He says, to all of you who are committing these acts of atrocity, he says, I beg you, I plead with you, I order you to stop the repression. He was killed while holding up the host and giving Eucharist a couple of days or weeks later by an assassin who was hired to shoot him right there.
Yeah.
So he opened up a tremendous stream of grief and also rage, courage.
Right.
Take that from him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know, generally speaking, I've read enough, those who have this entrepreneurial spirit, you read so often that they were at an impasse where they had no idea where they were going to get their money, what they were going to do, how they were going to move forward. But somehow they believed in their vision enough to, the way I see it, just throw all caution to the wind and just go for it. Just no matter what obstacle that they were facing, they found a way to work through it.
Yeah.
And you hear those stories over and over.
Yeah.
They just take that first step, and wherever it takes them, they allow themselves to follow.
Yes.
Not a real person, but I really think it's like Taoist. Like when you read Lao Tzu and Tao Te Ching, it's just that idea of, water just, it flows and it finds the way rather than forcing its own way through with an idea of where it should go. So
Yes.
I like
Yes.
Wendell Berry's
Right.
version of that.
Right. Water is the most powerful of the elements. And yet, it will do that. Yeah.
Yield to everything.
Yeah. Yes.
Came to my mind was Venerable Tipton Chodron. I don't know, maybe you know, she's founder of Shavasi Abbey in Eastern Washington, which was a dream of hers for half her life, decades. She spent decades of not knowing what to do. When she finally, they purchased property, and there she was. Her monastery included herself and 2 cats. She had no idea where food was coming from, where if anything was going to come of this. But she she held to the Dharma. This was
Yes.
going to be a monastery, she had a vision of it will be a place where people can come and train in the Vinaya in the West. And she held to that, even
Yes.
to the point of, not buying food, eating only what's offered. And there were times when it was just her and these cats, and there were no offerings. She had to scrabble for carrots in the garden. But
Yeah. Well, what you don't know about that is that I was with her at a conference, and she knew that I had established Olympia Zen Center. And she came to me and she said, Eido, I don't know what to do. And I looked at her, I said, of course, you just go forward. Just do it. So she did. Not because I said so, but yeah.
she asked her teachers the same kind of question. They gave her the same answers. Do it.
Exactly. Go forward. Go forward. I mean, she knew what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that she didn't really know what to do. She didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
That was more it for her. So, but that can be just as important, the how. It's all about how. Life is just how. It's not what or anything else. How. The how is the final question. How do you do something? How do you go forward? So that was just her question. How do I do this? Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but I'm going to venture a guess, thinking of the novel and the movie The Manchurian Candidate, where this man finds himself actually elected, and at the close of the story he says, well, now what? And I'm thinking of President Zelensky. I mean, he was a stand-up comic, right?
Yes.
Not a politician, not a world leader or a leader on the world stage. And yet, almost immediately, he recognized his country was in dire trouble and he needed to reach out to world leaders and to rally his people. And he found a way to do it and do it successfully.
Yes.
He
Yes.
rose to the
Yeah.
occasion.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that we can do also is to recognize those among us who are living that, not know what to do, and yet going forward and getting some strength from the fact that we are in company with one another. We are not separate from these people who have shown us this potential. So we don't have to hide out behind our newspapers and feel, oh, the end of the world is coming. We can certainly recognize those heroic people among us and feel that it is not all lost and it's not all so terrible. There are great things happening with a lot of don't know what to do.
So that reminds me, I know people personally, and I've seen it quite often where, there has been a great loss. I'm thinking, the parent who has lost a child.
Yes.
And I'm just so amazed that these people have found a way through to heal and to laugh again.
Yeah.
And for me, it's so inspiring because I need to see that. You need to be able to see people get through that kind of grief.
Yes, right. I found myself weeping today for the president, for the extreme situation he is in with his son possibly going to prison, and the weight of the country upon him, and the weight of the suffering of the family. And I found myself weeping, and I can't imagine being in that kind of situation. I mean, certainly there are plenty of fathers who have seen their sons go to prison, but to be the head of the country and to feel that Just extraordinary times we're in. Anybody online want to say anything?
This did make me think of the author Saint-Exupéry, who was the French pilot,
Not so.
who
All right,
wrote
well,
one of
we go forth, but we go forth in the Dharma, we go forth in practice. Claiming, truly claiming that we are child of the Buddha, truly claiming the illuminating light of awakening. That we must do. And the rest will follow. We will know what to do. Like Tubten children, you will go forward. You will go forward in faith and in the profound quality of care of one's whole being. The Dharma does that when we totally claim the light of awakening. Even if you've had no experience, you claim that so fundamentally and profoundly, and you can walk with confidence.